Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Tuesday morning. It's July 7th, 2026. Great to be with you here on a Tuesday on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. Hope we're having a great summer. We are in the middle of the summer right now, and a lot of warm weather out there, a lot of weather issues. We'll discuss that in the forecast, and also a few news stories giving you the latest. Before that, though, I do want to remind you we have another great show lined up for you today. I'm so excited. Author and speaker and fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, Noelle Mering, is going to be joining us. She is amazing, and she has a new book coming out, No Contact, How a Seductive Ideology Broke Families and Friendships and How We Can Repair Them. Now, it's available for pre-order. It's coming out in September. But she wrote a very important think piece about this whole issue that's happening now, these broken families, and how so many people have bought into the idea that if I disagree with my parents, or if they voted for someone with whom I disagree, or for whom I did not vote, then I can't talk to you anymore. Not just at the holidays, but basta, period. That's it. Our relationship is over. It's happening more and more. And we'll talk about that. She's the author, if you remember, from the best-selling book, Awake, Not Woke, A Christian Response to the Cult of Progressive Ideology. So much to discuss with Noelle Mering, and that's coming up at 16 minutes past the hour. And then we're going to take additional look at the situation with the Society of St. Pius X, because we're still getting a lot of emails, and there's a lot of questions regarding, can Catholics, faithful Catholics, attend Mass from the Society of St. Pius X? So joining us will be Dr. William Newton, professor of theology at Franciscan University. He was quoted in an article on EWTNnews.com very recently. Second hour, of course, on a Tuesday means it's Newman Guide News with Kelly Solomon, and this is such an uplifting, great story about the positive things about Catholic education. You may have heard about the big contest that was going on for the 250th anniversary for students, the Ultimate Civics Showdown, a big scholarship being offered, $150,000. Yes, you heard correctly, $115,000. Well, that scholarship prize was won by a young Catholic girl, Wyoming Catholic College. She's also the daughter of the president of that school. And Kelly has brought him on the show this morning, and he joins us in hour number 2 on EWTN Radio Extra. Now, also for my 2 cents segment, I want to share another audio clip. This time it's a little bit shorter than yesterday. It's about 3.5 minutes. This is more from the Secretary for the Dicastery of Evangelization. Remember, he was the keynote wrapping up the wonderful EWTN Academy, speaking to them at their big wrap-up dinner. And his talk is one of the best I've heard, not just on media and Catholic media in particular, but on evangelization. And I want to play a clip which is part of his talk prior to the clip we played yesterday. If you remember, he gave the students 4 points in terms of building a faithful life as a communicator. I'm paraphrasing, but he gave them 4 main points. This is leading up to that. And he's talking about what's being discussed in the gospel for today, indirectly, of course, because he wasn't actually quoting the gospel for today. But when I read the readings for the Mass, I immediately connected to this beautiful talk given again by the Secretary for the Dicastery of Evangelization last week in Rome, where he talks about the need for all of us to be disciples. Everybody in the pool, nobody gets a break. By virtue of our baptism, we're all called to evangelize. It's going to look very different for each of us, and it may be very small for some of us, big for others, but nobody gets a pass, okay? By virtue of our baptism, we are called to evangelize, and he stresses this in this portion of his talk that he gave last week. So we'll look at that during 2 cents. That is the show for today on a Tuesday. Let's take a look at this weather, which is still kind of crazy across parts of the country. In the northern plains and to the upper Great Lakes and mid-Atlantic, heavy to excessive rain could bring flash and urban flooding today. Severe thunderstorms producing damaging winds are very likely over parts of the Dakotas into Minnesota this afternoon and into the overnight, with other isolated storms producing hail or wind over the northern high plains. And then we have extreme heat returning to the southern and the southwest part of the country. That is a look at our weather this morning and our rundown, as we say. It is already 4 minutes past the hour. Time to check the news for you here on a Tuesday morning. It's July 7th, 2026, here on EWTN. Let's get started. EWTN News reporting this morning, a growing number of Catholic bishops here in the U.S. are instructing the faithful to avoid illicit sacraments celebrated by the Society of St. Pius X after the traditionalist group's bishops incurred the penalty of excommunication last week. The Vatican on July 2nd declaring that 6 bishops involved in the SSPX's unauthorized July 1st Episcopal consecrations incurred automatic excommunication. Now, despite repeated warnings, the Society's bishops consecrated 4 new bishops without a pontifical mandate, an act of open disobedience to the authority of the Pope that carries automatic excommunication for the 6 bishops involved. Now, the bishops here in the United States that are offering or stretching out an olive branch to folks involved in the different sacraments include Archbishop Hebda of Minneapolis-St. Paul, Bishop James Johnson of Kansas City, St. Joseph, Bishop Terry LaValle of Ogdensburg, New York, and Bishop Douglas Lucia of Syracuse, also Bishop Donald Hying of Madison, Wisconsin, and Bishop Frank Caggiano of Bridgeport, Connecticut. Those are among those issuing statements or preparing efforts to instruct the faithful in this matter. Now, Bishop Frank Caggiano of Bridgeport inviting anyone who previously worshipped with the group to come home. He said the Holy See has made it clear the clergy of the society are now to be regarded as schismatic. Caggiano also saying in a statement, this means that from this day forward, the sacraments they celebrate are illicit. I know these words are difficult to hear, he added, especially for those among us who have worshipped, whether on a regular basis or on occasion, at liturgies celebrated by the priests of this society. Over the years, he said, I have come to know some of these families, and I have been moved by their love for the beauty of the sacred liturgy, their devotion to our Catholic tradition, and the seriousness with which they seek to raise their children in the faith. The society is a fraternity of priests known for its celebration of the traditional Latin Mass in opposition to the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. And again, more on this story on EWTNnews.com. For human life.
Each person is a sacred gift that reflects your face from the first instant of existence to the final breath of their journey on earth. Today, we ask for the grace to recognize and protect the unique and unrepeatable value of every human being. May we learn to welcome life unconditionally, to tenderly care for fragility, to accompany each stage with respect, and to bravely defend those who have no voice. Forgive us, Lord, when we fall into indifference or the culture of discard.
He released a monthly Pray with the Pope message, which is prepared by his worldwide prayer network. It was founded in 1844 as the Apostleship of Prayer. The Pope's worldwide prayer network is a pontifical work now entrusted to the Society of Jesus. In December of 2020, Pope Francis established the pontifical work as a Vatican foundation and approved its final statutes in July of 2024. The death toll in last month's Venezuela earthquakes, now more than 3,500. Some 18,000 people are homeless after those quakes, which struck on June 24th. Teams continue to dig through the rubble, looking for victims with machinery, digging large trenches for burying the dead. The quake destroying more than 60,000 buildings and leaving thousands without access to clean water. Many have untreated injuries, and infections have started to spread, putting a bigger strain on the nation's healthcare system. And Tammy Trujillo tells us an elite team of Northern Virginia first responders is coming home after helping with the disaster relief work in ravaged Venezuela.
Virginia Task Force 1 was demobilized by the State Department on Monday. Dozens of team members and 6 trained rescue dogs were sent to the South American country last month after 2 earthquakes led to over 3,000 deaths. The U.S. Embassy in Caracas posted a thank you message to the urban search and rescue team, saying their extraordinary work brought hope to Venezuela at an extremely critical moment. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Prosecutors in Utah trying to make their case against accused Charlie Kirk murderer Tyler Robinson as Kirk's widow was looking on. Former Utah Valley University police officer Chris Bagley described yesterday how he secured the area near the event and discovered a disturbance in the gravel on a nearby rooftop.
To me, it looks like a sniper pad, a person that has been laying in a prone position, and you've got markings of elbows, knees, and feet to where somebody was in the line of sight of where Charlie's tent was.
Prosecutors again trying to convince a judge they do have enough evidence to try Tyler Robinson and also seek the death penalty. The week-long preliminary hearing marking the first time Kirk's widow Erica and his parents are in the same room with the man accused of killing him. The family left the proceedings when an officer began describing the shooting. Robinson is accused of fatally shooting Kirk at Utah Valley University last September. And the string of humid days with triple-digit temperatures around New Jersey late last week getting blamed for 29 deaths in the Garden State since Thursday. The state health commissioner says a state medical examiner will officially check on the causes of each death this week, but says most were in central and north Jersey. Ages range from the mid-30s and the 80s, and the doctor says many were in homes with no air conditioning. Scott Pringle tells us, meanwhile, around 20,000 homes and businesses are still without power in New Jersey from those weekend storms, and most are Jersey Central Power and Light customers.
JCP&L now says most of its customers still in the dark will get their power back on by Wednesday night. It is taking a while because the weekend storms took down a high number of trees, limbs, power lines, and damaged equipment. This guy is in hard-hit Paramus.
Supposed to go to work and I'm stuck here. I can do nothing.
Meanwhile, some areas in New Jersey dealing with the aftermath of flash flooding after 4 to 5 inches of rain fell quickly in some spots between Sunday and Monday afternoon. These folks are in Asbury Park.
I could see ducks swimming in the street. It was like you walk into a pool or whatever. It was insane. I can't believe how much rain we got.
In New Jersey, I'm Scott Pringle.
President Trump saying the U.S. will either make a deal with Iran or finish the job. He issued that warning while speaking to reporters from the Oval Office yesterday.
It won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people.
He also reiterated that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Peace talks between the two countries are set to resume after the funeral for Iran's supreme leader. The ceremonies are being held nearly 4 months after he was killed in a U.S.-Israeli airstrike. And Mark Mayfield tells us Hamas says it will hand over governance of the Gaza Strip to a U.S.-backed interim administration.
The group has been running the Palestinian territory for 2 decades, including during the attacks on Israel in October of 2023, attacks that led to a devastating war that left the territory in shambles. While Hamas announced its intentions Monday, it made no promises to disarm, as demanded by the U.S. and Israel. Some analysts say the offer is a symbolic gesture that aims to restart a stalled peace process that has kept humanitarian aid from reaching the more than 2 million residents of Gaza. Hamas said that handing over authority will end any pretext that Israel has for continued occupation. So far, members of the transitional U.S.-backed government have been blocked by Israel from entering the territory. I'm Mark Mayfield.
A North Carolina man pleading guilty yesterday to running $1 million wedding venue scam. Federal prosecutors say 43-year-old Jason Lotman pleading guilty to wire fraud involving Champaign Manor, a popular venue near Charlotte, North Carolina, that shut down last year. Court papers show he took over $1 million from couples and investors, including upfront payments meant for wedding vendors. It is a Tuesday morning, 13 minutes past the hour. More great programming coming up right here on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. Stay tuned. So how many of you have a situation in your family or maybe someone in your circle of family and friends who is estranged from a loved one? Maybe a friendship has broken. I know many people, including people in my own family, who have that situation. It's very sad and always heartbreaking. And normally I think in the last maybe 10, 15, 20 years, it's changed. Because I remember growing up, there were issues, obviously, with relationships. And that might have been to, let's say, someone who has someone in the family with an addiction or some sort of abusive behavior, and for protection, maybe from children or for your own self-protection, you have to break away from that person, at least for a time being. But that's not so much the case anymore. Those cases still exist, obviously, but things are changing. And appreciate the great work of Noelle Mering, a best-selling author. She's also a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and the author of a great book, and I know many of you have this book, Awake, Not Woke, A Christian Response to the Cult of Progressive Ideology. She's also the co-author of the wonderful Theology of Home series, and she has a brand new book. Can't wait to get this. It's coming out in early September, No Contact, How a Seductive Ideology Broke Families and Friendships and How We Can Repair Them. And a recent article of hers on Substack is addressing the great content in her new forthcoming book, No Contact. Noelle, great to have you on the program. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Great to be back.
All right, so I read the article, which was excellent, and I read the sneak peek of the book, and it really just held my attention. You're a great writer, of course, but I felt a lot of what you were speaking about because I've had it in my own family. I have friends who have similar situations, but something has changed where it's more than just, and not to mitigate, let's say, a serious issue in a family, but it's more than the people who need to break away, as I mentioned in the introduction, for, let's say, abuse or some sort of an addictive situation. It's different now. And you went around the country interviewing people about this. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was really going around the country talking about the woke movement where I first started noticing in the Q&A in particular that more and more often people would stand up and say, my children or my grandchildren are estranged from me, and it's largely over politics or ideology. And the more I started noticing it, I thought, this seems like the most common question I'm getting now is what do I do in my familial relationships? That this is really touching people very personally. And so I started looking into it because associated, of course, with that is that oftentimes these kids were also losing the faith. So as someone concerned with the church and the future of the church, that felt alarming to think that, this next generation, we would have numbers even diminishing. Now, in some ways, I think that's being mitigated. We're seeing somewhat of a revival, which is incredibly hopeful. And the Holy Spirit is certainly at work in all families, including your own and the ones that I know. Most everyone I talk to has seen this kind of estrangement problem affect someone that they love and care deeply about. It's really painful. And it's taken on a different tenor, as you said. I mean, I think that we used to be able to disagree. Sometimes there's always, most people have always experienced real tensions amongst having severe disagreements about how they saw the world. But it has taken on a new tenor. And I think that there really is a lot going into this that I tease out in the book, a number of things that are kind of coming to play. Certainly digital media is a problem, the rise of a sense of the autonomous self and a lack of gratitude being replaced with severe grievance. So all these factors are turning in on themselves to create kind of this powder keg where in so many families where they just can no longer disagree well, that it feels like a point that's a threat. It feels like it's threatening particularly the younger generation. And so in order to resolve this, they have to pull themselves out of the relationship entirely. It's quite heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. And I think also it's extremely unrealistic. And those who are expecting everyone to agree with them if they enter into the workforce, that's just not reality. But they can't seem to accept it any other way.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there's sort of a lack of resilience in some ways, but it also is, and it really is, I can go into the book, this what I call the empowerment delusion, that there's this interesting juxtaposition that a lot of young people believe. One is that they have this godlike power. They can determine what meaning is, what the meaning of marriage is, what the meaning of sex is, what the meaning of their bodies is, as we see in the transgender movement. But at the same time, they have this severe victim mentality where the locus of control of their lives is totally externalized. So whether they succeed or fail in their life is going to be attributable to systems outside of themselves and outside of their control, which is an incredibly despairing idea. So that combination of a godlike power over things you cannot control and then a total lack of power and lack of agency over things that are entirely within your control sets these kids up, I think, for a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, and truly a lot of rage. Because if you think that all the problems in your life are externalized, then there's not much you can do to change it. You don't have much hope. You can only sort of rage against the system or blow up the system. And so this feeds into a lot of ideological possession. Because ideology gives people sort of a false sense of power, belonging, loyalty, something to believe in, a sense of being part of a moral struggle. And I think we've seen this a lot in politics at large, but this plays right into how we interact with our relationships, because our identity becomes destabilized, and so our relationships become very brittle. And then if my identity is unstable, I don't feel like somebody disagreeing with me is simply someone disagreeing with me. I feel like it's an existential threat against me. So I think we're seeing this in our families. We're also seeing this in our nation, as my Substack article talked about.
Yeah. And the Substack article is excellent. It's entitled "When a Nation Turns Against Itself." We're talking with best-selling author Noelle Mering, of course, a fellow with the Ethics and Public Policy Center. And some of the stories of these families, obviously you use first names. To me, they were shocking, but then again, in some ways they were not. I want to refer to the woman who was finally able to bring herself to come to a holiday dinner. I think this is in the beginning of the book, if I remember correctly. It might be in the article. I read both last night, so I might be confusing the two. But it was a powerful story because she came to the dinner, had a wonderful time by her own admission. They enjoyed a wonderful holiday dinner. Everything was great. People were laughing. They're toasting the holiday. And then she had to step outside because it was too much when she was thinking about the people in the room voted for him. And by him, I'm assuming she meant Donald Trump, he's been a very divisive person for whatever reason, if people agree with that or not. But she couldn't handle the fact that she was having a good time with her family. Nobody brought up anything offensive, as you described, but she had to get out of that atmosphere for whatever reason. How that to me is so sad.
Yeah, it really was sad, and I think sadly relatable. And the family was very aware that they had differences, and so they very intentionally said, this is not going to be a topic of conversation amongst themselves. This is totally an evening for charity, for connecting, not for talking about any division, and everyone was on board. They're not a particularly political family by any means, but they are pro-life, and I think she made some guesses that they probably voted for Donald Trump. So she came over, and as you said, they had a lovely evening. And when she stepped outside, one of the moms went out to just check on her, and it was almost as though she felt morally sullied by being in proximity to them. That they were complicit in something that she, and I think, this is really the sort of what the nature of progressivism teaches a lot of people, is that, these people are holding up their obstacles to the progression of history. And so insofar as they are creating an obstacle, they are hindering sort of everyone else's well-being. And if your external locus of control has a lot to do with who's in Washington, D.C., whether or not you're going to thrive in your life, then, you're going to be holding very complicit in a very personal way the people who are not supporting the right person being in that office. So it's a disordered, out of proportion understanding of what politics is. That's not that politics aren't important, nor that one politician candidate is entirely bad or entirely good. That's just not not an integrated way of understanding either human beings or politics itself. So it was quite sad, and she ultimately had to leave by her own volition, asked the other woman to get her purse so that she could leave without saying goodbye, and it just was too difficult for her. And it didn't seem like a performance. It just, as this woman testified, it just seemed like she truly did not feel like she found herself feeling comfortable, and she didn't like the feeling that she might actually enjoy them and might actually be having a nice evening.
Isn't that sad? How stressful is that? She's bringing on more stress for herself. And then if you are living your life by, who's in office, and if you agree or disagree with your relatives and your close friends, how stressful and unstable is that in terms of a lifestyle?
Incredibly. It makes yourself unstable, but it also makes your relationships incredibly unstable. So there's a lot of volatility. Some of the people in the book that I featured would say things like, I'm okay with my, religious conservative relatives right now. However, if healthcare changes or if they take a position on this particular policy regarding gender care or something.
Noelle, we have to take a break. We'll be right back and pick up that point. Noelle Mering is with us. Continuing our conversation this morning with Noelle Mering, fellow with the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Showed a terrific piece right before 4th of July, When a Nation Turns Against Itself, and really giving, I would say, a good tease to her wonderful book that's coming out in September, No Contact. And I read everything and went over it a couple of times, reliving some of my own experiences and experiences of friends. I wanted to let you continue your point before we took a break in terms of the unstableness when we put our faith in politics. You were talking about the healthcare issue, that some people are saying, well, if this healthcare issue changes, I don't know where I'm going to go when it comes to getting back with my family.
Yeah, that's right. So a couple of the people were saying is that, my relationships will be fine so long as something doesn't happen in D.C. that is going to affect me personally. That once that does happen, like taking away the health care the way it is now or what have you, then those people are no longer going to be in my lives. And it struck me, what an incredible admission that, this relationship is dependent on something that happens thousands of miles away. That I don't deny it affects people. What happens in D.C. and in politics do affect people. But that we would hinge the health and the stability of our relationships upon that seemed to me to be striking.
Mm-hmm. How much of this is a replacement for a God or something in which to believe? Because if you don't have God, which centers us as Catholic Christians, if you don't understand that we are not in control all the time, and God gives us a brain, He doesn't expect us to walk around, with our eyes closed, and He gives us, talents and gifts to use and apply in our work and in our relationships. But if you don't have a relationship with God, since we're meant for God, something has to fill that longing. And to me, it seems as if, and according to your research, it certainly has, the politics has become a religion for many people.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think when we don't sort of have that deep understanding that we are creatures made by God, that immediately points us to sort of a reverence and a gratitude and a wonder. Once all of that is eliminated, I think we become very susceptible to something like I was talking about in the last segment, the empowerment delusion, radical autonomy.
Right.
So I see this a lot both in the no contact movement, but I also think it plays into the sort of rejection of patriotism that we're seeing now. That if I believe that the things that are most important in my life are the things that emanate out of my autonomy, then I'm going to have sort of a posture of cynicism towards the things that have been given to me that I didn't earn or generate. So that can extend to the parents, my parents. That can extend to my country. That can extend to the body I've been given. You can see a lot of tentacles coming out of that sort of rise of radical autonomy. But it also, I think, has a real nihilistic underpinning. So I'll say this, in the book, several people I've noticed will say these words, and this is in the public realm too. They'll say, I didn't choose to be born. My parents chose to have me. And so they owe me. I don't owe them. So there's an inversion of the fourth commandment. Yeah. It's an inversion of the fourth commandment. I owe my parents nothing. They owe me everything because they chose. It was their choice to have me, not my choice to
Okay,
live.
but you're alive, and if it weren't for your parents, you wouldn't be in existence. So that makes no sense.
Right. So the undercurrent there is that my life is not a blessing, it's a burden. Life is bad, which is the first premise of philosophy, that life being is good. So there's something really sinister, obviously, afoot there, and a rejection not only of their parents, but of their own life. And so you see also how this plays into people not having children, not moving into the realm of parenthood themselves. Because if it's seen as a sacrificial thing that is not a sacrifice that's noble, but one that is selfish, then why would you become one? So there's a lot of dynamics, and I tease a lot of that out in the book. But I do think, as you say, this does emanate out of sort of a rejection of God as the first principle of our lives, and also a loving Father. So the ingratitude, I think, is really at the heart of both the no-contact movement, but also the rejection of patriotism.
But in the book, the subtitle is How a Seductive Ideology Broke Families and Friendships and How We Can Repair Them. That, I think, is hopeful because some people may feel that there is no hope in repairing those relationships or friendships.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think like a lot of ideological sort of, I don't want to call it trends, it's too light, but phenomenon, it doesn't work. So a lot of the people in the book will, and in this, caught up in this epidemic of no contact, will say, well, I want a chosen family. I'm going to have a chosen family. We choose the people that I have Thanksgiving with, choose the people that I walk through life with, and they will become my family. And sometimes that's necessary. If someone has a crisis, they need people who are friends to become like family. But insofar as an ideological movement, what a lot of these people find is that, their chosen family can just as easily unchoose them. It's built on an insecure premise. And so, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, even 30 years down the road, some of these people are looking around saying, that worked out well when I was in my 20s and I was fun, handsome, good looking, had some money, had health. And now I'm getting older. My health is breaking down. I'm having some struggles, I'm having some crises, I need people who are obligated to me. I need the unchosen family. I need my family to get that family, people who are just given to me and that have obligations here. If they're all hinged on choice, then you really miss out on the richness of love, which is that there are some people to whom we are beholden. And that's not only in our given family, but in the people that we do choose in marriage. That adopts a sort of givenness. So these sorts of relationships are what make not only an individual stable, but also a community stable, a family stable, and a nation stable. As the cellular structure of the nation, the family is obviously essential. And I think there's a real connection between a lack of sort of patriotism and a lack of sort of respect for the patriarch, for the parents, for what we've been given.
Now, I know we only have about 2 minutes left, and this is a very, very big question, but can you just give us a short, and we want people to get the book and read the article, and I'll give you both titles before we wrap up, folks, but some minor steps or just maybe a glimpse of what you're suggesting in the book, No Contact, and in how to repair these broken relationships, Noelle?
Yes, certainly. So I think, there's a number of things I recommend, but I'll just state a couple. One is that I think we need to understand when a shared discussion and debate is not going to be a shared reality for now. And so I think one of the problems that oftentimes we can do is we think if I can just show them the truth or argue my position better, then they're going to agree with us. We'll reconcile. Yeah. That's usually not the true. Oftentimes people didn't arrive at their positions through reason, and so they're not going to be brought back to the correct position or the correct understanding through reason. So I think showing people in our lives that we affirm who they are, their deeper identity, regardless of whether or not they agree with us, that it's not hinged on that. And so we become very invested in what's happening in their fullness of their lives, their friendships, their successes, their failures, their joys, their work, their struggles, those sorts of things, and approach them with great curiosity. I talk in the book a bit about being curious, having a posture of curiosity. Why do you think what you think?
Right.
How do I understand you better? Instead of a posture of fighting. Nor do we want to compromise our positions either. We don't want to lie and say that we believe something we don't believe in order to sustain the relationship. So just a couple of ways people can err and try to find that right balance, I think, is one key aspect to being on the right road to redeem those relationships.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to get the book and read in its entirety. I read it the sneak peek last night along with your terrific article. The article on Substack was posted a few days before our big 4th of July celebration, where Noelle took a really good look at what's happening in our country and generally, of course, covered a lot of the issues that we spoke about this morning. And that article is entitled When a Nation Turns Against Itself. It can be found on Substack. And then also her book, No Contact, How a Seductive Ideology Broke Families and Friendships and How We Can Repair Them. That will be released from Random House in September. We're definitely going to have her back on. Noelle, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. More Catholic Connection coming your way. Be right back. Welcome back. Catholic Connection. It's July 7, 2026. Dr. William Newton is with us. He's a professor of theology and department chair for Franciscan University and featured in an EWTN news article on the developing situation with the Society of St. Pius X. And trying to answer a question for all of us as a Catholic. Many people are asking, can you attend an SSPX Mass? But Dr. Newton, I did want to start out, first of all, by thanking you for joining us. And also there is a very interesting story this morning on EWTN News, as many of the bishops in the United States are reaching out to their own flocks, but also to the flock of the SSPX that may be in their own community, and helping them understand what is wrong with what's happening, and reaching to them and saying, please come home, and then also catechizing their own people on this, which I think is very good. What's your take on the, let's get a kind of overall view with you in terms of what's happened over the last couple of weeks with this. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure. It seems to me that the situation that's been maybe slightly ambiguous has now been ultimately clarified, meaning so-called canonical status of SSPX. Some people were wondering whether they were already in schism or not, but the excommunications, which we've had in the last couple of days of the bishops who ordained and the bishops who did ordaining, I think make that pretty clear. And the doctrinal note which accompanied the statement about excommunication just simply makes things clear that any of the ministers, the priests of society who stay as priests of society, and as would laity, lay faithful, if they so-called formally adhere to the society. So I think in one way a great deal of clarity has occurred by this rather dramatic, I suppose drastic, you might say, action on the part of the Holy See. So at least I think people now should be able to see clearly where things stand.
Now, you're saying in your article on in the article in which you were featured on EWTNnews.com that there are levels of collaboration. Can you explain what you mean by that? Levels of collaboration and culpability.
Yes. So the doctrinal note, it says, I'll just read this bit, I think it helps, says, with regard to the lay faithful, those who formally adhere to the priesthood society of St. Pius X, under the conditions established in the previous note, they are considered schismatic and excommunicated. Now, the word formally is important there. If we go back to the 1996 particular intervention of the Holy See on this, we see that two things have to be in place for a lay faithful to be considered, you might say, fully a member of SSPX and therefore part of the schism. One is that they have to have the attitude that the society SSPX is really, you might say, the way forward. It's the superior option to the Catholic Church. So in that sense, they are signed up to the project. And additionally, they have to sort of manifest in their practice basically exclusive practice through the society SSPX. So you might say that the ones who are sort of fully sort of card-carrying members are determined on the basis of those two criteria. And they, if they stay like that, are part of the schism and are under this excommunication, or are excommunicated by that very act. But that's not the same, perhaps, as people who would go occasionally to it, or now are, to some degree, pulled back from the society. That said, the doctrinal note at the end has this to say. It says, all the faithful are exhorted to remain steadfast in communion with the Roman pontiff, with the bishops in communion with him and the whole church, and to refrain from participating in celebrations and activities promoted by the aforesaid priest society of St. Pius X. So even if those individuals would, you might say, be fully implicated in the schism, the church is asking them not to, seems to me, from that, attend services which are part of that society.
In terms of the points that you mentioned about the levels of collaboration and cooperation, I would think that since if there are a meeting with or receiving the sacraments, obviously from a priest with SSPX, then they're going to have to do, I'm talking about the laity, their own self-examination of conscience in terms of where they are with the society, because those priests are not going to tell them that they're wrong, or the bishops are not going to tell them that they're wrong. So it puts a lot of the burden on the layperson, does it not?
It does. I would agree with that. And in some sense, now the situation would be if a lay faithful individual was going to go to the Mass with the SSPX, it would be a kind of analogous of them going to Mass at an Orthodox church or a Coptic church, because those churches also are not in full or proper communion with Rome. And there are regulations which regulate that possibility in canon law, 844, for anyone who wants to go into the details. It permits that in extraordinary situations, but it says that this is not permitted to receive communion in these churches which are not in communion with Rome if it will lead to ignorance or indifference. And it's very hard for me to see now in the current situation, now the Church has made it clear what it understands about the schismatic character of SSPX, how going to a Mass with SSPX and receiving communion wouldn't be a kind of manifestation of indifference that I see, the lay faith would say, I don't see any difference between going to the SSPX and going to my local parish. And that then seems to me to preclude reception of Holy Communion even occasionally at a Mass of the SXPX.
Mm-hmm. Talking with William Newton, theology professor and the chair of Franciscan University's Theology Department, and the article in which he's quoted can still be found at EWTNnews.com if you're interested, with the headline, EWTN News Explains, as a Catholic, can you attend an SSPX Mass, talking about this developing story. So how do we bring these people back home? I think it was a great step by many of the bishops, including Archbishop Hebda, Bishop Caggiano, and many others, reaching out to their flock for catechesis on this, but also extending an olive branch. How do you think we mend this brokenness in the church right now?
Yeah, I mean, it can only be mended in a way from each side, and practicing the truth, practicing humility. I'm glad to hear that bishops are reaching out to those who have been part of SXPX, because, I mean, at one level, I mean, what they want is a good thing, in the sense of they want to celebrate beautiful liturgy. They want to live the Catholic truth. It's just a question of, like, obedience, really, to how the church wants to move forward on that issue. I think it's good if bishops can reach out to these individuals and somehow provide for them within the Catholic Church that kind of faith and liturgical experience which is dear to them. I think that is a good way forward. I really hope that happens.
Can you explain the difference? And I think this is where a lot of the confusion comes from. But the sacraments are illicit but not invalid. That can cause some confusion because they sound like they're one and the same.
Yeah, the word illicit really just means legal. Valid means kind of did it work? Did it do anything? And it's possible to celebrate a sacrament so that it actually produces an effect, but you don't do it according to the way in which the Church wants to regulate it, because the Church, I mean, has to protect the sacraments, and so it has certain regulations over how they are actually performed. And it's possible to perform in a way where it didn't actually go through the correct, it didn't do it in the correct way, used the correct system, you might say, in order to perform it. Okay, illegal, illicit, but it's still valid. It's still going to produce an effect. Now, this is a really important point here, because given what the Church has now done, or not really done, really proclaimed that those priests who adhere to SXPX are excommunicated. I mean, that's more a declaration of what has happened. It's not a statement of excommunication that makes the excommunication happen. What the SXPX did brings about that excommunication. That actually cuts those priests off from a very important connection with the Church, a so-called juridical connection. And two sacraments need that juridical correction to actually be valid, to actually work. Now, that's not true of the Eucharist. So if you went to an SXPX Mass, the priest would actually, yes, bring about transubstantiation. The real presence would be there on the altar, because Eucharist does not need jurisdiction, but penance does, and marriage does. So what we're now in a situation is that an SXPX priest cannot validly absolve from sin. It won't work. So, and that's seriously important. So, I mean, if you are thinking about providing for your elderly mother in hospital and she wants confession, if you call an SXPX priest now, that priest is not able to forgive sin. And if somebody attempts to marry and have the SXPX priest as their witness, those two individuals will not truly marry. So that actually has made an incredibly important change to the validity of two sacraments, marriage and penance.
So what do you think? Do you think that Catholics should or should not attend? I think I know your answer already, and you mentioned it in the article, but a Mass of the SSPX.
They should not attend, no. I mean, because attendance can, when it's very, in this formal sense, can actually be under the excommunication. If their adherence is not that strong, but they're still attending, it seems to me they go directly against what the Holy Father is doing here. The Holy Father is not going to announce this excommunication. The Church is not going to be so strong about this unless there's a really important reason. And part of the excommunication is to sober people up. I mean, that's the whole point of it. It's not, first of all, to punish people. It's to sober people up and ask them to reconsider where they are going. And this statement about his communication is surely at one level addressed to everybody in the church, saying, please see this is not the way forward. So that's why I quoted at the beginning this exhortation to remain steadfast to the Roman pontiff, and it says, refrain from participating in celebrations, activities of the SSPX. I mean, it seems clear to me what the Holy Father is asking of the lay faithful.
Talking with William Newton, theology professor and chair of the Franciscan University's Theology Department, about the developments in the news story we've been following for you extensively here at EWTN, all of our news outlets, and here on Catholic Connection regarding the Society of St. Pius X. It is heartbreaking, though, because if you think about it, and it makes no sense to me in terms of common sense, you say, if you look at the statements from the bishops and regarding the ordinations that took place, they say, well, we're just trying to be closer to the church because of all the doctrinal issues and the moral confusion, so we're trying to be more serious about the church than you are. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But you're going against the Vicar of Christ. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I would agree. There seems to be a deep inbuilt contradiction here. There's a point in the ordination rite of the bishop where it has to be asked, do you have the apostolic mandate for this? And when that was asked in the recent ceremony, the answer yes or no was not given. The answer was given, we have to do this for the good of the church. This is an emergency situation, so basically we're going to ordain these individuals anyway. So it really comes down to a question of who has the authority to decide what is best for the church. Yeah. And in the end, we have to say, Catholics, the Holy Father has the ultimate authority to determine what is the best for the church and what is the way forward here.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Great clarification. And will you be writing or speaking on this in the near future? Anytime soon?
Well, if I'm asked to, I will.
Okay. Well, we may be asking you again, so stay close to that phone. Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. Dr. William Newton featured in a recent article. EWTN News explains, as a Catholic, can you attend an SSPX Mass? We'll continue to cover this story on Catholic Connection and, of course, all of our outlets. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning in to a Tuesday morning edition of Catholic Connection. It's July 7, 2026. When we return, hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra, we are going to be hearing more from the wonderful Secretary for the Dicastery of Evangelization, who spoke to the EWTN Academy last week for their big keynote and their final evening, their dinner, their wrap-up dinner. And this talk is so incredible. And I want to use a portion of it today. I used a portion of it yesterday. I want to use a portion of it today that ties in with the gospel. Now, he didn't mention this particular verse, but what he's saying does address it in the fact that this wonderful Archbishop from Africa is encouraging all of us to remember our God-given call as baptized Catholic Christians. By virtue of our baptism, we are all called to evangelize. And I know that many of you, if you're involved in ministry at the parish level or another type of ministry, those of us who are already involved in ministry are often asked by those who are not to do more. I'm not saying that those who are not, maybe they can't do it for whatever reason. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that, those who are involved are usually the ones who are asked to do more, which is fine depending on the circumstances. But the average person, even if you're not, quote unquote, working in the church or at the parish, can do their part. And this is what the gospel is saying for us today. It's not only up to those of us already in ministry at whatever level, or the religious, or those of us on Catholic radio. It's a very important point. And then we're going to have another great interview with Kelly Solomon, and she is bringing to us a big story about a young woman, a Catholic young woman, who won a huge scholarship, the ultimate Civics Showdown. We'll have the update on that story. All that coming up on EWTN Radio Extra. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And we continue our Tuesday programming, Catholic Connection, here on EWTN's Radio Extra. Hope you're having a great day so far in the middle of summer. July 7th. Wow, time flies. Coming up on our 2 Cents segment, if you were listening yesterday at this time of the day, I shared with you an audio clip from a beautiful talk that the Secretary for the Dicastery of Evangelization with the Vatican gave at the EWTN's wrap-up dinner for their Academy for students and young people seeking Catholic communications. It was a great talk, and yesterday we focused on his suggestion for them. He gave them 4 points to consider as they were going off into the world or back into the world of communications. And this morning, it's about a 22-minute talk. So there's a lot of material in this presentation. This morning, when I was doing the readings, I read the gospel and thought immediately of the Archbishop's statements on evangelization and about the responsibility for all of us, where our Lord is telling us today in the gospel that the harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. So we'll discuss that in 2 cents and play about a 3.5-minute clip, another clip from this wonderful address from this wonderful Archbishop. And then Kelly Solomon, always bringing us great stories for discussion with the wonderful work of the Cardinal Newman Society and our Newman Guide News on Tuesdays. She is going to give us an update on this really cool competition that took place, and this was in connection with our nation's big anniversary of 250 years. The Ultimate Civics Showdown Scholarship was won by a Catholic student. Her name is Miriam Washut, and she's the daughter of the Wyoming Catholic College president. She's won the inaugural presidential 1776 award competition. And the president of the college is going to be with us this morning to talk about that. I'm sure he's very proud of his daughter. But to talk about, in line with what we always discuss each week with Newman Guide News, the importance of a good Catholic education. So great discussion. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun as well, something to celebrate. Not so much celebration with the weather, though, unfortunately. We always give you the weather forecast, so here we go. The National Weather Service is saying in the northern plains into the upper Great Lakes and the mid-Atlantic, we have more rain. Heavy to excessive rain may bring flash and urban flooding today. Severe thunderstorms producing damaging winds are most likely over parts of the Dakotas into Minnesota tomorrow afternoon into the overnight, with other isolated storms producing hail or wind over the northern high plains and extreme heat returning to the southwest part of the country. It is almost 3 minutes past the hour. We appreciate your listenership here on every hour of Catholic Connection, Monday through Friday. You're listening on EWTN's Radio Extra. Let's get started at 3 minutes past the hour on a Wednesday morning with your news. Well, as we discussed in the first part of the program this morning, in hour number 1, a growing number of Catholic bishops are instructing the faithful to avoid illicit sacraments celebrated by the Society of St. Pius X. This after traditionalist groups' bishops incurred the penalty of excommunication last week. You can find this story on EWTNnews.com. The Vatican declaring July 2nd that 6 leaders involved in the Society's unauthorized Episcopal consecrations last week incurred automatic excommunication. Now, despite the warnings, the bishops consecrated 4 new bishops without a pontifical mandate, in an act of open disobedience to the authority of the Pope that carries automatic excommunication for the 6 bishops involved. Archbishop Hebda of Minneapolis-St. Paul, Bishop James Johnson of Kansas City St. Joseph, Bishop Terry LaValle of Odensburg, New York, Bishop Douglas Lucha of Syracuse, New York, and Bishop Donald Hying of Madison, along with Bishop Frank Caggiano of Bridgeport, Connecticut, among the bishops issuing statements or preparing efforts to instruct the faithful in their areas. Now, Bishop Frank Caggiano of Bridgeport invited everyone who previously worshipped with the Society to come home. He said the Holy See has made it clear the clergy of the Society are now to be regarded as schismatic. He also said in his statement this means that from this day forward, the sacraments they celebrate are illicit. He said, I know these words are difficult to hear, especially for those among us who have worshipped, whether on a regular basis or on occasion, at liturgies celebrated by the priests of that society. He also added, over the years I have come to know many of these families. I've been moved by their love for the beauty of the sacred liturgy, their devotion to our Catholic tradition, and the seriousness with which they seek to raise their children in the faith. The Society is a fraternity of priests known for its celebration of the traditional Latin Mass, as well as opposition to reforms of the Second Vatican Council. Pope Leo XIV urging all Catholics around the world to join him in his monthly prayer intentions. This month, he wants people to join him in praying for respect for human life.
Each person is a sacred gift that reflects your face from the first instant of existence to the final breath of their journey on earth. Today, we ask for the grace to recognize and protect the unique and unrepeatable value of every human being. May we learn to welcome life unconditionally, to tenderly care for fragility, to accompany each stage with respect, and to bravely defend those who have no voice. Forgive us, Lord, when we fall into indifference or the culture of discard.
He released his monthly Pray with the Pope message, which is prepared by the Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network. It was founded back in 1844 as the Apostleship of Prayer. The Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network is a pontifical work entrusted to the Society of Jesus. In December of 2020, Pope Francis established his pontifical work as a Vatican foundation and approved its final statutes in July of 2024. The death toll in last month's Venezuela earthquakes, now more than 3,500, and some 18,000 people are homeless after the quakes, which struck the area on June 24th. Teams continued to dig through the rubble, looking for victims, and machinery digging large trenches for burying the dead. The quakes destroyed more than 60,000 buildings and have left thousands without access to clean water. And many now have untreated injuries, and infections have started to spread, and that's putting a big strain on the nation's already struggling health care system. And Tammy Trujillo tells us an elite team of Northern Virginia first responders is coming home after helping with the disaster and relief work in earthquake-ravaged Venezuela.
Virginia Task Force 1 was demobilized by the State Department on Monday. Dozens of team members and 6 trained rescue dogs were sent to the South American country last month after 2 earthquakes led to over 3,000 deaths. The U.S. Embassy in Caracas posted a thank you message to the urban search and rescue team, saying their extraordinary work brought hope to Venezuela at an extremely critical moment. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Prosecutors in the Utah area are trying to make their case against accused Charlie Kirk murderer Tyler Robinson, as Kirk's widow looked on yesterday. Former Utah Valley University police officer Chris Bagley, among the first to testify in the preliminary hearing, describing how he secured the area near the event and discovered a disturbance in the gravel on a nearby rooftop.
To me, it looks like a sniper pad, a person that has been laying in a prone position, and you've got markings of elbows, knees, and feet to where somebody was in the line of sight of where Charlie's tent was.
The team of prosecutors are trying to convince a judge they have enough evidence to try Tyler Robinson and seek the death penalty as well. The week-long preliminary hearing marking the first time Kirk's widow Erica and his parents are in the same room with the man accused of killing him. The family exited the proceedings when an officer began describing the shooting. Robinson is accused of fatally shooting Kirk at Utah Valley University last September. And the string of humid days with triple-digit temps around New Jersey late last week getting blamed for at least 29 deaths in the Garden State since Thursday. The state health commissioner is saying that a state medical examiner will officially check on the causes of each death this week, but says most were in Central and North Jersey, with the ages ranging mainly from the mid-30s all the way up to the 80s. And the doctor says many were in homes with no air conditioning. Meanwhile, as Scott Pringle tells us, around 20,000 homes and businesses are still without power in New Jersey from weekend storms, and most are Jersey Central Power and Light customers.
JCP&L now says most of its customers still in the dark will get their power back on by Wednesday night. It is taking a while because the weekend storms took down a high number of trees, limbs, power lines, and damaged equipment. This guy is in hard-hit Paramus.
Supposed to go to work, I'm stuck here. I can do nothing.
Meanwhile, some areas in New Jersey dealing with the aftermath of flash flooding after 4 to 5 inches of rain fell quickly in some spots between Sunday and Monday afternoon. These folks are in Asbury Park.
I could see ducks swimming in the street. It was like you walk into a pool or whatever. It was insane. I can't believe how much rain we got.
In New Jersey, I'm Scott Pringle.
President Trump saying the U.S. will either make a deal with Iran or finish the job. Trump issuing that warning, speaking to reporters from the Oval Office yesterday.
It won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people.
He also reiterated that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Peace talks between the countries are set to resume after the funeral for Iran's supreme leader. The ceremonies are being held nearly 4 months after he was killed in a U.S.-Israeli strike. Mark Mayfield has more Mideast news, with Hamas saying it will hand over governance of the Gaza Strip to a U.S.-backed interim administration.
The group has been running the Palestinian territory for 2 decades, including during the attacks on Israel in October of 2023, attacks that led to a devastating war that left the territory in shambles. While Hamas announced its intentions Monday, it made no promises to disarm, as demanded by the U.S. and Israel. Some analysts say the offer is a symbolic gesture that aims to restart a stalled peace process that has kept humanitarian aid from reaching the more than 2 million residents of Gaza. Hamas said that handing over authority will end any pretext that Israel has for continued occupation. So far, members of the transitional U.S.-backed government have been blocked by Israel from entering the territory. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Trading has begun on the brand new Texas Stock Exchange. It's seen as a huge step in the state's goal to become a national financial hub.
Capital follows growth, and Texas has become one of the strongest places in America to build and grow a business.
That's Justin Yancey, who heads the Texas Business Leadership Council, saying this is also a huge boost to the state's image. Yesterday was considered the soft opening of the exchange. Later this year, the symbols for thousands of stocks and other equities will come online, allowing the public to start trading. Brad Ford tells us big changes are coming to Microsoft's Xbox division.
Microsoft's Xbox unit's been struggling. 3,200 jobs will be cut. It's part of a broader push by Microsoft to lower its labor costs. This follows voluntary buyouts the company started offering employees in May. 1,600 positions will be cut now, while the other jobs will be cut as 4 game development studios leave the Xbox unit. In all, 4,800 jobs are being eliminated. I'm Brad Ford.
And a new law inspired by an Alabama team injured in a Florida shark attack could soon bring shark attack alerts directly to your cell phone. President Trump recently signing Lulu's law, requiring the Federal Communications Commission to allow wireless emergency alerts when shark attacks occur nearby. The law is named after Lulu Gribman, who lost a hand and part of a leg in 2024 in a shark attack in Walton County. Her family says another swimmer was seriously injured about 90 minutes earlier and a few miles away, and they do believe an alert system could prevent similar incidents in the near future. It is a Tuesday morning. Hope you're having a beautiful Tuesday, July 7th, 2026. You're listening to Hour Number 2, which we come to you every day on EWTN's Radio Extra. Just a reminder, we're not out of the woods yet with the rough weather because there's more of it coming. If you didn't hear the weather forecast earlier, in the northern plains to the upper Great Lakes and Mid-Atlantic, heavy to excessive rain could bring flash and urban flooding and severe thunderstorms, Dakotas, Minnesota, into today and tomorrow. So keep that in mind. We'll be right back on a Tuesday morning. Minutes past the hour. It's a Tuesday morning, July 7, 2026, here on EWTN's Radio Extra. Yesterday, I introduced you to the beautiful keynote address given by Archbishop Fortunatus Nwachukwu from Africa. He is the secretary for the Dicastery of Evangelization at the Vatican, and he addressed the EWTN Academy, which is a wonderful communications program offered to young Catholic journalists and those still at the college level, mainly young professionals, but still those seeking to finish their degree or even an advanced degree. And he told the Catholic journalists to be disciples before you become influencers, that the first thing you have to have is that relationship with Christ in order for everything to be set straight in your life, and that's for all of us regarding of our professional or religious vocations. And now reading the entire talk, you can find that on EWTNnews.com. Vatican official to Catholic journalists, be disciples before influencers, or just research Vatican representatives, keynote at the EWTN Academy. It'll come up. And I was thinking about this talk as I read the whole thing from start to finish. I heard the whole thing from start to finish because my friend Anthony Johnson, who runs the EWTN Academy, sent me a link to it. And it's just a great talk on so many levels. And what he said in this particular part that I'm going to play for you, we're going to share for you this morning, leads up to the part we played yesterday where he gave the students 4 points on how to be really good Catholic communicators. Okay? What he was saying up to that point ties directly into the gospel for today. And again, as I said earlier in teasing this segment, he did not mention the gospel reading, but it does tie in because it's about evangelization, meaning we all have to get in the boat. Get in the bark of Peter, stay in the bark of Peter, and make sure we help to row or do something on the ship. Nobody gets a pass, okay? All right, here's the gospel for today, if you have not read it yet, from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 9, verses 32 to 38. A demoniac who could not speak was brought to Jesus, and when the demon was driven out, the mute man spoke. The crowds were amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He drives out demons by the prince of demons." Jesus went around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and illness. At the sights of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest." And this is a gist of part of the message by this wonderful archbishop from Africa who works at the Vatican, serving as the secretary for the dicastery of evangelization. We are all called to evangelize. So let's take a listen.
Every baptized Christian is sent to bear witness to Christ. More than 2,000 years have passed since Jesus entrusted the church with this mission. Yet, these words have lost none of their urgency, none of their relevance, none of their power. The mission has not changed. What has changed is not the mission, but the roads that lead to the nations. In the first century, the apostle traveled by foot and by sea. Today, all nations, the expression all nations, are also found in the digital highway. They gather on Instagram. All nations gather on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, podcasts, blogs, news platforms, and countless online communities. The digital world has become one of the great mission fields of our time, where ideas are exchanged, cultures are shaped, public opinion is formed, and millions of people search each day for truth, for hope, for meaning, and for belonging. If this is where people gather, then this is where the disciples of Christ must also be present. It is where you must be present also, not merely to attract attention, but to bear witness to the gospel with wisdom, integrity, and love. Our greatest challenge today is not technology. Our greatest challenge is truth. We live in a culture fascinated by what is trending. Every day, we ask what is going viral, what is gaining attention, what everyone is talking about. These are not unimportant questions, but they are not the most important question. The Christian disciple must ask something deeper. The Christian disciple must ask, is it true? Trends come and go. They change with every season, every algorithm, and every generation. Truth does not change.
Truth does not change. Very interesting and very insightful, very powerful, very meaningful, the words of this great Archbishop who spoke to the young people last week at the EWTN Academy. And I connected with this on another level because years and years ago, and I shared this with the students in my presentation, presenting on TV, radio, and new media, which I gave on June 24th toward the beginning of the EWTN Academy, that I was greatly inspired as a journalism student at Central Michigan University eons ago by an article I found in a professional magazine for students and professional journalists. It was called The Quill Magazine, and it was published by the Society of Professional Journalists, of which I was a student member, and I got it faithfully every month and read every article. And I was struck by the comments of John Paul II made to reporters who were covering him in 1979 during his visit to the United Nations. And he thanked the journalists for their coverage. And he said, "Be faithful to the truth and to its transmission. For truth endures, truth will not go away, truth will not pass or change." The same words that the Archbishop told those young people last week. Truth will not pass or change. And he also said, "I say to you, take it as my parting words to you, the service of truth, the service of humanity through the medium of truth is something worthy of your best years, your finest talents, your most dedicated efforts." Now, obviously, the Archbishop and now, of course, Pope St. John Paul II, when he was speaking at the UN to the reporters, they were speaking from a media perspective. But I think the words of the Archbishop and the words of Pope St. John Paul II can be applied to all of us, especially if we look at the gospel today, right? That we have to get out there and do our share in terms of reaping the harvest. And I know over the years, and I'm sure if you've been in ministry for any time, you found that people will come to you and say, well, why aren't you doing this as well? And what about this? Why can't this be done? And I get emails like that on occasion. Well, you should be covering this, or you should be doing that, or why aren't you doing this and in this activity or this other ministry? Or as a deacon couple, maybe asking me and Deacon Dom to take on more responsibility. Not that we shouldn't, or not that they don't have any good ideas, but oftentimes I find that those people who are making all these suggestions are the ones who want or desire the work to be done by everyone else, and not because they're bad people. Oftentimes it's because they themselves don't feel qualified. But God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And as Pope St. John Paul II said, as Jesus said today, as the Archbishop said last week, we are all called to evangelize in whatever shape or form. Obviously it starts in the home with the domestic church, especially if you're parents. But there are many, many ways to evangelize. We just have to figure out how God wants us to do the evangelizing part in terms of our own ministries. And especially when it comes to communications, as the Archbishop told the young people last week. People are there, right? That is the new Areopagus, as John Paul II said. But we're all called to evangelize and use our own means, our own platforms, to be laborers in the vineyard. We need to be workers. All of us, every single one. We'll be right back. Every Tuesday, we interview Kelly Solomon, Vice President of Newman Guide Programs for the wonderful Cardinal Newman Society, with our Newman Guide News. And we have big news this morning, very exciting news, some great news. One of our own, a wonderful young Catholic woman, won a major scholarship, a national competition, and I am going to let Kelly, as we always do, because she's the one who brings us these wonderful guests, introduce our guest and the topic about which we're speaking. Kelly, this is so exciting, the ultimate Civics Showdown. Tell us about it.
It is such amazing news, Teresa. We're so excited to have Miriam Washut join us this morning from Wyoming. She's a 17-year-old homeschool student who beat out 8,000 other students across the country in what was billed, as you said, the impossible civics test. She won the nation's presidential 1776 award, collected a $150,000 scholarship, and even stood beside President Donald Trump in the Oval Office. Miriam, we're so excited to have you join us here today. Congratulations. Can you walk us through what steps you had to take in this competition and what kind of questions you answered along the way?
So the first round was just like an online test. There was 3 rounds, like segments, beginning, middle, advanced, with like 30 minutes per round, and it was just multiple choice. You were trying to answer like as many questions as you could in a time. And I guess like those questions, there was just, I think they had like 1,000 questions for each level. So basically like you couldn't, basically like unlimited questions. And I think like they asked a wide variety, like depending on the level. They asked like who wrote the Federalist Papers and what was the response to like a certain proposition in the notes of debates of the Philadelphia Convention, or like who is Polybius thanking in his in Pericles' funeral oration, like who is he thanking for their prosperity, or like what is like one of the main provisions of the farewell address, or just like kind of stuff like that, or like who won such and such a battle, or according to like this biography, what did this person do after this time, or stuff like that.
Wow. So Miriam, what was your reaction when you found out that you were the winner of the scholarship?
I mean, like, I was very excited.
Were you shocked, or were you surprised?
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised, because I was pretty sure I had 3rd place, and then they announced it, and I didn't.
So what do you attribute the fact that you did so well on this competition? Your education? Tell us a little bit about your background and your upbringing.
So I'm a homeschool student in Lander. I like reading a lot, so I've just read so many books since I was like pretty young. So I think like that definitely helped, just because there was a lot of reading to prepare for it, and I was just more familiar with like older styles of writing and things, which made it a little bit easier for me to understand.
Wow.
And then I've just like always liked history, so I've done a lot of history stuff, and so I didn't really know very much about what like the actual materials that we were reading, but I was just like really interested in it. I think it makes it easier to learn when you're interested in it.
Oh, sure, sure. Kelly, go ahead if you have another question, please.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I mean, among the documents you had to study were the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, Madison's notes on the Constitutional Convention. Pretty impressive lineup of documents you studied. Miriam, take us through. So you had to do a competition in Dallas before you were brought to D.C. What else were you able to do in D.C.? Were you able to explore a little bit while you also had your main competition there as well?
Yeah, so in D.C., actually, like as part of the competition, they took all the competitors to the National Archives. So we got to see like the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, all the stuff at the National Archives. And then my family also went to the Capitol and the Library of Congress. And one of the kind of unexpected things that we got to do was while we were at the White House, Marco Rubio showed us Cornwallis's sword that he'd was surrendered at Yorktown to George Washington. So that we hadn't expected that at all, but it was just in the White House, so we got to see it while we were there, which was really cool.
Wow.
And so the prize was $150,000 in terms of scholarship money. What are you thinking about in terms of, I know you're only 17, but where you'd like to go to school, what you'd like to study? Have you gotten that far yet?
Yeah, I'm planning on going to Wyoming Catholic College, which is a liberal arts college in Wyoming. I'm excited about that because they do a lot of first-hand sources and reading the actual writings of all of these people, like Aristotle and Socrates and Plato and all that stuff, and which is just going to be really cool. And also seminar classes, which will it's nice to be able to discuss things with people. And then after that, I'm not really sure what I want to do, but it's a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very nice amount of money to help pay for college. God bless you. Kelly, what does this say to you about the importance of getting a good start in education early on?
Well, Miriam, you are such an incredible example of what Catholic homeschoolers are doing in our country. I mean, it's been a great revival in Catholic homeschooling, and the Cardinal Newman Society embraces Catholic homeschooling. We embrace all forms of Catholic education, any type that can lead students to the truth of Jesus and provide students with an excellent education. And certainly you've been provided with a wonderful education. So I think this reflects really well on Catholic homeschoolers, and also provides a great spotlight on Wyoming Catholic College, which is one of the Newman Guide colleges. And it's just an incredible institution. I'm excited that you'll be going there. And Miriam, I think it also says gives us a lot of hope for the future of our country, as young people like you are studying the foundations of our country and have a deep love for our country. What kind of motivation does it give you to keep studying and keep learning, and to expand your mind and to continue deepening your love for America and what you can, how you can be a good American in society today?
Yeah, I mean, like, it just puts it all into context, the things that we have now, you see where it came from. And I didn't realize how much, I didn't know until I started learning about it. And I said, once you start learning, then, you just want to learn more. So I'm definitely excited to continue, studying American history and all that.
So what did our celebration of 250 years mean to you, Miriam, given all that you have studied and this incredible competition in which you were so victorious? Looking back now at our 250 years and what you do know about the Founding Fathers, what did this anniversary mean to you? What does it mean to you?
I mean, honestly, I think it's just amazing that, it's lasted for so long, and you see what was very unique about our founding, compared to so many other revolutions, right? You get the French Revolution, which is, kind of a similar idea of, wanting, freedom and things, but it just doesn't work at all. So you kind of just see the fact that, we've lasted for 250 years, the way that it was envisioned is incredible.
Wow. What did your parents say? I know we're interviewing your dad with Kelly coming up after the break, but what did your parents say when you received the news?
They were very happy. I don't remember exactly what they said. I think it's mostly just, cheering.
And so were they with you? How many people were with you when you went to meet the president?
So they didn't actually bring our parents because of all the security for the UFC fight.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we just told them afterward. So when we when it was announced, it was just us and the film crew.
Wow, pretty exciting, Miriam. Thank you for joining us. Your dad's going to be joining us next to continue the conversation and also highlight, as we do every Tuesday with Kelly Solomon, the importance of a good Catholic, a real Catholic education. We'll be right back. Once again, it's a Tuesday, and we do Newman Guide News with Kelly Solomon, the VP of Newman Guide Programs for the Cardinal Newman Society. Kelly always brings us great stories and great guests to help us understand more deeply what's happening in Catholic education, or what should be and needs to be happening in Catholic education, as the case may be. And we are talking now with the father of the big grand prize winner in that wonderful competition for students across the country for the anniversary of our nation. And Father Deacon Kyle Washut is a president of Wyoming Catholic College. He's also a Byzantine Catholic deacon. He's joining us now as a proud papa. And before I turn it over to Kelly, congratulations. Your daughter was wonderful, extremely articulate, no surprise there. What was your reaction in the family when you heard the news?
So we were just overwhelmed with pride. As her mom said, we always known Miriam's exceptional. We were just thrilled that everyone else got to know it.
Aw, that's beautiful. All right, Kelly, I'll turn it over to you before I jump back in.
Yes, Father Deacon Kyle Washut, it's great to be back with you. He's been involved with Wyoming Catholic College really since its inception. He's also a graduate of two other Newman Guide colleges, Thomas Aquinas College for his bachelor's degree and International Theological Institute for his graduate studies. As you mentioned, Teresa, he is a Byzantine Catholic in communion with Rome. He was ordained to the diaconate in 2025, and he and his wife, Erin, live out in Wyoming with their 6 children. Father Deacon, can you tell us what kind of hope does this give you for the future of our country as you saw young people, your daughter Miriam, and others who have a great love for our country and a great understanding now of the foundation of our country?
It was just an incredible array of young people, both at the regional competition that we went to in Dallas and then at the national competition in D.C., where they were down to just the top 20 in D.C. But all of them were coming from a wide variety of backgrounds. Many of them were homeschooled. many of them from private schools, many of them from charter schools, sort of the full array of educational choice, and that they had turned and focused and spent months reading the founding documents of the U.S. And in reading those, had come to appreciate the story of the fight for liberty and what liberty meant, and were able to answer very nuanced, sophisticated questions. And I thought, wow, if this is typical of our best and brightest, we are in great shape for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like your daughter, and I'm sure that's a product of her good homeschooling, was already interested in reading a great deal.
Just a voracious reader, had been, the secret to homeschooling is having great moms, and so she had the advantage of that. And her mom had just encouraged a great wide range of reading. She's had the benefit of being surrounded by adult mentors that encourage the reading, that are in conversation with her about the books. And so she just had a kind of intellectual appetite and a sort of a literary culture that these documents could fit in and be interpreted in well.
I'm looking at your homepage of your website, wyomingcatholic.edu, and on the homepage it says, steeped in wonder, formed in wisdom. What does this saying mean to you, and what should we take from this in terms of not just for young people in college, but for all of us in our Catholic faith?
So the phrase comes out of Dr. John Sr. from the Integrated Humanities Program, who taught at the University of Kansas, taught that program from 1970 till about 1979. And that was a secular great books program taught in a secular public university, and yet was responsible for an incredible number of conversions, including that of Bishop Connolly. And Archbishop Coakley, for example, identifies his vocation as coming out of that. The monks of Clear Creek arise out of that. And what was so distinctive and foundational in that approach was that the entrance into wisdom begins with wonder. That wonder is a distinctly human act. It's the act of embodied intellects who are able to see and have experiences and appreciate both their own limitations and the greatness to which they're called. And that puts them in the right space to be receiving wisdom. St. Thomas Aquinas says that a sign that our Lord had a human intellect is that the Gospels several times record him as wondering. So the wondering as the beginning of the intellectual life, the standing in awe before a question that you don't completely know the answer to, that invites you with both delight and humility and trepidation and piety to continue into the pursuit of wisdom. And so that, I think, is just foundational for any human beginning the life of the intellectual life of the mind. And that one of the things that John Sr. encouraged was that to begin with the studies, to begin with the renewal of education in America, we need to begin with a renewal of wonder, a renewal of experience in the real, an avoiding of the distractions that keep us sort of superficially entertained but not ever entering into real wonder. And then that cultivation of wonder from great poetry, from stories, from the immersion in reality, that is what's going to lead to the revolution of Christian wisdom that we need. So that's the founding vision of Wyoming Catholic College, but I think that's just foundational to what it means to be a human in an embodied mind in today's day.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking with Father Deacon Kyle Washut, the president of Wyoming Catholic College, about the school, but also about his daughter who won a major competition, which was in honor of our nation's 250th anniversary. And Kelly, let me get your thoughts on this in terms of the idea of having wonder and being well-formed and reading. I mean, the reading aspect is so important, and this is what so many of the Newman Society schools do so well.
Yes, as Father Deacon Kyle Washut was talking about this real wonder and helping students avoid the distractions of the time, I mean, they really put this into practice. Maybe you can expand on that, Deacon Washut, and explain how you help students experience these real-life experiences out at Wyoming Catholic and what you do to help them avoid the distractions of the time with the influence of social media and immediate responses with cell phones and whatnot.
Sure. So at Wyoming Catholic College, we ask all of the students to fast from their cell phones while they're students on campus. They check their cell phones in and they put them away. We have limited internet access, again, not because we think that using the internet is bad, but because we want to give them that space to encounter reality and be transformed by it so they know the right use of technology. And then we immerse them not only in the wonders of poetry and literature, but also in the outdoors. They begin their time at Wyoming Catholic College with a 3-week backpacking trip. And over the course of their 4 years with us, they'll spend 10 weeks in the backcountry and a semester on horseback. But the thing is that that's the distinctive way we do this at Wyoming Catholic College. When we see the messages coming from Pope Leo for what kind of education do we need now in this digital age, I think we can see that over the course of his first year of pontificate, he's saying we need some version of this. He says all young people need a fast from distracting technology in the mode of St. Carlo Acutis so they can use it well. All young people need to immerse themselves in poetry and the outdoors in the mode of St. Pier Giorgio Frassati, the first two saints that he canonized. All young people need an education that is integrated and integrating, like St. John Henry Newman, who he declared as a doctor of the church, and all need to embody this, incarnate this in a concrete community. And so I think the Newman model of education, the Newman Guide model of education, the model of education we see in many of our homeschooling groups, it's what we'll see is this Leonine initiative, the call to fast, immerse, integrate, and then incarnate. And then that, I think, what the Catholic world needs for education right now.
So how do you do the fasting from the cell phones and the internet? Because I would imagine for the internet, they still have to do some research, which is not a bad thing, as you mentioned. But how much time are they allowed on the internet and use of their cell phones? And you say they check their cell phones basically at the door. What does that mean? How is that applied?
So practically speaking, the freshmen come, they turn their cell phones in. We have an office building where their cell phones are checked in the lockers. They then immediately go out on their 3-week backpacking trip, and they have what we'll call a digital detox. You're away from the phone for 3 weeks. Then they come back to campus. So the phones just stay in the lockers. If you need to check them out for a quick call for a medical appointment, or you need to do mobile banking, you can check them out. But aside from that, they're just away. We have landlines in the dorms, and you're able to call, and we have these antiquated things that the students think are very cool, the phone booths around campus where you can get inside, make a private phone conversation. And then with the internet, we just limit the places where internet takes place. There's not internet access in the dorms. We ask that the laptops not be open in the main classroom building during the during the school day. And we're moving toward even keeping laptops in our computer lab so that, you go there, you can access that. We have little word processors that you could type your papers on and reflection papers.
Okay.
All of that so that you could just focus on reading, conversation, and dialogue. Again, there's benefits for research. We'll have some access for when you have a research paper, you're able to go and access and do that. We don't have as many research papers because certainly for the first 2 years of the college, especially, we're very much focused on just developing those skills of reading, of conversation, of wonder, of reflection, of immersion. And those kind of foundational skills are best developed with some space away from the devices that are trying to get you to click and go down rabbit holes and the rest. And having developed those, we then think our seniors are going to better be able to use those devices well going forward.
Well, Father Deacon Kyle, when you're talking about this, I'm going back decades to my years in college where we had a phone in the hallway, one main phone. Of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. We didn't have the internet. We didn't, the computers were in labs, but they were those big kinds that when I worked on the college newspaper, it was those huge computers, right? But I learned so much in the conversations. I remember, being up late at night, talking to my roommates, or going downstairs to grab some soda or something and chat with somebody from another hall or whatever. And those friendships that were formed, the communities that were formed, which it's so important what you're doing. It's awesome. Kelly, do you see this kind of activity or away from different forms of technology at other Newman schools?
Yes, I think Wyoming Catholic College really leads in this regard, and it's something that all of the colleges, I think, are trying to implement various ways, because as we look at the rates of anxiety and depression among young people, as we look for ways to lead them to true happiness and joy and fulfilling lives, there's a real sense of the place of the college and how can they help foster an environment where community is flourishing, where friendships are flourishing, where wholesome activities are being done. And it's so exciting what's happening, I think, at Wyoming Catholic. I also, Father Deacon, want to return to some of your comments about homeschooling and asking more about how it's been a blessing in your family. I think it's such a wonderful form of Catholic education that needs to spread more widely to those families where it would be a good fit to provide their students with a really authentic Catholic formation.
Yes, please. But if you could do it, Father Deacon, in about 60 seconds or less, because we're running out of time. I wish we had more time with you. So go ahead. We'll let you have the last word.
So for us in Lander, Wyoming, there's not a Catholic school available. So if you want to have Catholic K through 12 education, you're doing it by providing it at home. And it has been a blessing, both the community that is formed of other homeschooling families, the opportunity to allow for our children to flourish, to focus on and tailor the education in the way that they most need, to allow them to read and pursue interests, but to allow them to also pursue the studies and the discipline in this environment of beginning in wonder, limiting their screen time, flourishing in community, and immersing themselves.
We're out
in
of
the
time, but we will give
environment.
the address of the college. Thank you both so much. I think it's great that Wyoming Catholic College is weaning kids off of technology and taking them out in nature. What a great thing to do. There's been special programs that have been done and aired on various Catholic outlets, and we've had one on EWTN a couple of times on students who've actually left everything behind in terms of technology and gone out to nature. And I think some of them did that last year before the canonization of Carlo Acutis. And St. Carlo Acutis is such a great example for young people because he liked video games, he liked computers, but he knew enough about temptation and addiction, even at his young age, where he limited himself every single day to the amount of time he would spend on technology. So what a great encouragement from Miriam and her dad in terms of really reading and embracing the wonder and just to get away from all the technology. Not that technology is bad. We're on technology. We're on radio. That's what church says. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the balance, we need to get back to that balance. All right, so coming up tomorrow on Catholic Connection, looking forward to interviewing my friend, art history professor. She is a doctor in art history. She's the #1 tour guide in Rome. Her name is Dr. Liz Lev. And there's all kinds of improvements going on at the Vatican in certain locations where they are repairing artwork. And Liz knows all about it. She practically lives there doing tours every single day to the Sistine Chapel, the Vatican museums. And she's going to give us a summary and also talk to us about the importance of beauty. And speaking of Rome and beauty, our very own Joan Lewis will be joining us. I think she's still stateside, having celebrated the nation's 4th in America. Have a great Tuesday. Talk to you in the middle of the week already on a Wednesday. Ciao, ciao.